Regional Vice President for the Southern Region. You see on the screen now, or shortly before the video, you saw two pictures of me. One in the gym working out, and one after participating in the Hat Run here in Baton Rouge. I showed those pictures because it reminded me of the work and the preparation we have to put in for our families and our new staff members, and that we call Strong Start. And I think it's so important for us to get off to a strong start, but knowing in doing that, we have to be prepped, training, and getting all of our ducks in a row to get our families and students and teachers off to a strong start. So today I'd like to share a few things with you, specifically in three parts. One, I'd like to share with you my acronym for the word team. Secondly, I'd like to introduce you, if you haven't already been informed or have read this piece called The Mousetrap, and I'd like to give you a brief testimony, a personal testimony of my Strong Start experience with one of my sons. So, in thinking about the word team, a T stands for trust. I think it's so important that we realize that trust is an action word, and that we have to not only trust the processes that we put in place for Strong Start, but we also have to be willing to trust our team members to make sure that we're all in this together and that we're willing to work together to get our families and new staff members off to the best start. Secondly, I think it's important that for the E, that we make emotional deposits. It's so key for us to be willing to invest in our new families, invest in our new colleagues, so that they will get off to a great start. I think when you think about emotional deposits, just think from a banking standpoint. We have to invest and make deposits so that when tough times come up or those unique situations come up where you have to make a withdrawal, that there will be something there. So you won't get any overdraft fees or have those painful, those tough conversations when you're asking somebody to do something and you haven't given them your time or hadn't been as nice to them as you should have been. The third is the A. And the A is just simple as it says, accept change. We know that onboarding new staff members or bringing new families into our virtual world, that we can't treat them like the last family members or the last year's families, or even we can't treat these new staff members like last year's staff members. Everybody brings a new perspective, and we have to be willing to make adjustments along the way and not lose focus of our true processes, even though we have to make some minor adjustments to support the families and support our new staff members as they're bringing their own unique circumstances to our virtual world. Lastly, on the team, and which I think is probably, other than trust, is the most important, and that's the mission before me. I don't think that any of us have perfect days throughout the Strong Start process. So when we're having those tough times, we have to keep in mind that it's about the mission of getting our families, new students, new staff members as well, off to a good start. So regardless of what's going on in our world, we have to put the mission of getting people off to a good start and a strong start before everything else is going on. The other thing that I like to stress is that Strong Start is not a month-long process. It's not an individual process for a department. It's not an individual process for a particular grade level. Strong Start is for all of us. It involves everybody in our company. It involves everybody at individual schools, every department. All of us are responsible for getting these families off to a strong start, getting our new teachers off to a strong start. And keeping in mind that if we can get them off to a strong start, they're more likely to have a successful year, and a successful year leads to retention. If you're not familiar with what the churn and turnover of students as well as staff members, how that impacts your culture, it negatively impacts your culture. So if we can put this work in on the front end to really invest in our time and our efforts into getting our families and new staff members off to a great start, it actually helps the entire organization. And if you want to look at it specifically at a particular school, it helps the entire school to have a successful school year. So as you think about Strong Start, think about the team. The trust, making emotional deposits, accepting change, and keeping the mission before me. So keep those things in mind as we embark on our Strong Start efforts. The next thing I like to share with you is a little parable called the mousetrap. And the mousetrap is key for what we're doing with Strong Start. And what I wanted, the reason I chose this mousetrap is because it shows and highlights when one of us has a problem or one department is struggling, it is a job of all of us to support that department to help them to be successful or to help that grade level. Or in our case, it's not just the FAST team, it's not just the teachers, it's not just the administrators. All of us work together when it comes down to Strong Start at a school for students and both our faculty members. So as you just embraced this, work with me on reading the mousetrap. It says, a mouse looked through a crack in the wall to see the farmer and his wife opening a package. What food might it contain? He was aghast to discover that it was a mousetrap. Retreating to the farmyard, the mouse proclaimed the warning. There's a mousetrap in the house. There's a mousetrap in the house. The chicken clucked, scratched, and raised her head and said, Mr. Mouse, I can tell this is of grave concern to you, but is of no consequence to me. I cannot be bothered by it. The mouse turned to the pig and told him, there's a mousetrap in the house. I'm so very sorry, Mr. Mouse, sympathized the pig, but there's nothing I can do about it but pray. Be assured you are in my prayers. The mouse turned to the cow, who replied, like, wow, Mr. Mouse, a mousetrap. I'm in grave danger. Huh. So the mouse returned to the house, head down and dejected, to face the farmer's mousetrap alone. That very night, a sound was heard throughout the house, like the sound of a mousetrap catching its prey. The farmer's wife rushed to see what was caught in the trap. In the darkness, she did not see that it was a venomous snake whose tail the trap had caught. The snake bit the farmer's wife. The farmer rushed her to the hospital. She returned home with a fever. Now everyone knows you treat a fever with fresh chicken soup. So the farmer took his hatchet to the farmyard for the soup's main ingredient. His wife's sickness continued, so that friends and neighbors came to sit with her around the clock. To feed them, the farmer butchered the pig. His wife's sickness continued, and she did not get well. In fact, she died. And so many people came to her funeral, the farmer had the cow slaughtered to provide meat for all of them to eat. So the next time you hear that someone is facing a problem and think that it does not concern you, remember that when the least of us is threatened, we're all at risk. And in reading this, I'm thinking about what we see with Strong Start. And if we're not putting our efforts in place to help our families and our faculty members get off to a good start, we end up losing in the end. Like I said, if we all are aware of the churn of turnover with students leaving our schools, possibly wanting to come back, or staff members who stay with us for less than a year and trying to get those positions filled. Anytime there is a problem in this Strong Start process or throughout the year with supporting a family or supporting the staff members, it is all of our job to give them the support they need to be successful. Finally, I'd like to share my own personal testimony of having a Strong Start experience. When I moved to Baton Rouge several years ago, my son was going to an elementary school that I was not very familiar with. And in getting into the school, we did not initially have a great experience. We had some concerns about expectations, the communication, but there was one group of people at the school that did everything they could to make sure that everything went well for our son. And surprisingly, it was not the administrator, it was not the teacher, it was not the counselor. It was a group of college students and their supervisors in the after-school program. They worked extremely hard to make sure my son was successful. They checked on him during the day. I mean, they did everything they could. They communicated with my wife and I. And it brought me back to the thought that in our work and in the school work, as well as in any business, it's about the people. and the efforts we put in to support the people. And if you keep in mind about that as we go through the Strong Start season, that is not the task of one person to develop and foster relationships with our new families and our new colleagues. That's the task of everyone that interacts with them. So as we get ready to embark on Strong Start and working very hard to get people off to a good start in our schools and throughout K-12, I'll encourage you to remember the acronym for TEAM: trust, emotional deposits, accept change, and put the mission before me, and specifically thinking about the mousetrap. If there's a challenge in one department, or there's a challenge in one grade level, or there's a challenge with the FAST team, or with the teachers, or with the administration, that we should rally together to support one another. And if we can do these things, all of our students, all of our new staff members will have a strong start in all of our schools. Thank you for your time.